Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai.
Jai.
ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai.
Jai.
Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopal Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai.
Jai.
Vrindavan Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Navadvip Mayapur Dham ki jai.
Jai.
Ganga Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Jamuna Mai ki jai.
Jai.
Tulsi Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Devi ki jai.
Jai.
Shamaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Prem Anande.
Hari Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol.
Hare
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We're reading, discussing, studying the Sri Caitanya Caritamrita, Adi Lila chapter 12, the expansions of Advaita Acharya and Gadadhar Pandit. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives a summary of the 12th chapter in his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya. The 12th chapter describes the followers of Advaita Prabhu, among whom the followers are Achyutananda, the son of Advaita Acharya, are understood to be the pure followers who received the cream of the philosophy of Sri Advaita Acharya who received the cream of the philosophy Sri Advaita Acharya enunciated. Other so-called descendants and followers of Advaita Acharya are not to be recognized. This chapter also includes narrations concerning the son of Advaita Acharya named Gopal Mishra and Advaita Acharya's servant named Kamalakanta Vishwas. In his early life, Gopal fainted during the cleansing of the Gundicha Mandir at Jagannath Puri and thus became a recipient of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The story of Kamalakanta Vishwas concerns his borrowing 300 rupees from Prataparudra Maharaj to clear a debt of Advaita Acharyas, for which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised him when he came to know of it. Kamalakanta Vishwas was then purified by the request of Sri Advaita Acharya. After describing the descendants of Advaita Acharya, the chapter concludes by describing the followers of Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. Text number 1.
That's Sanskrit.
Advait Angri Abja Bringangstan Sarashar Brito Khilan Hitva Sharan Shara Brito Naumi Chaitanya Jivanan. The followers of Sri Advaita Prabhu were of two kinds. Some were real followers, and the others were false. Rejecting the false followers, I offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Advaitacharya's real followers, whose life and soul was Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Text 2.
Joy Joy Mahaprabhu Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Joy Joy Nityananda, Joy Advaita Dhanna.
All glories to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. All glories to Lord Nityananda. All glories to Sri Advaita Prabhu. All of them are glorious.
Sanskrit.
Oh, Sri Caitanya Martaror, Dvitiya Skanda Rupina, Srimad Advaita Chandrasya, Shakha Rupan Ganan Numa. I offer my respectful obeisances to the all-glorious Advaita Prabhu, who forms the second branch of the eternal Chaitanya tree, and to his followers who form his sub-branches. So who's the first branch?
Nityananda.
Yes, yes. Good. Text 4.
বৃক্ষের দ্বিতীয় স্কন্দ আচার্য গোসাই, তার যত শাখা হইল তার লেখা নাই।
Sri Advaita Prabhu was the second big branch of the tree. There are many sub-branches, but it is impossible to mention them all.
চৈতন্য মালির কৃপা জলের সেচনে সেই জলে পুষ্ট স্কন্দ বাড়ে দিনে দিনে।
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was also the gardener. And as he poured the water of his mercy on the tree, all the branches and sub-branches grew day after day.
সেই স্কন্দে যত প্রেম ফল উপজিল, সেই কৃষ্ণ প্রেম ফলে জগৎ ভরিল।
The fruits of love of Godhead that grew on those branches of the Chaitanya tree were so large that they flooded the entire world with love of Krishna.
সেই জল স্কন্দে করে শাখাতে সঞ্চার, ফলে ফুলে বাড়ে শাখা হইল বিস্তার।
As the trunk and branches were watered, the branches and sub-branches spread lavishly, and the tree grew full with fruits and flowers.
প্রথমে তো এক মত আচার্যের গণ, পাছে দুই মত হইল দৈবের কারণ।
At first, all the followers of Advaita Acharya shared a single opinion. But later, they followed two different opinions as ordained by Providence. Purport. The words Daivera Karan indicate that by dint of providence or by God's will, the followers of Advaita Acharya divided into two parties. Such disagreement among the disciples of one Acharya is also found among the members of the Gaudiya Mat. In the beginning, during the presence of Om Vishnupad Paramahansha Paribrajak Acharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, all the disciples worked in agreement. But just after his disappearance, they disagreed. One party strictly followed the instructions of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but another group created their own concoction about executing his desires. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the time of his departure, requested all his disciples to form a governing body and conduct missionary activities cooperatively. He did not instruct a particular man to become the next Acharya. But just after his passing away, his leading secretaries made plans without authority to occupy the post of Acharya, and they split into two factions over who the next Acharya would be. Consequently, both factions were ashad, or useless, because they had no authority, having disobeyed the order of the spiritual master. Despite the spiritual master's order to form a governing body and execute the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math, the two unauthorized factions began litigation that is still going on after 40 years with no decision. Therefore, we do not belong to any faction. But because the two parties, busy dividing the material assets of the Gaudiya Math institution, stopped the preaching work, we took up the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivinoda Thakur to preach the cult of Caitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world, under the protection of all the predecessor acharyas. And we find that our humble attempt has been successful. We followed the principles especially explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, verse beginning, Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. According to this instruction of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it is the duty of a disciple to follow strictly the orders of his spiritual master. The secret of success in advancement in spiritual life is the firm faith of the disciple in the orders of his spiritual master. The Vedas confirm this. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata gurao tasyaite katita hyarta prakashante mahatmana. To one who has staunch faith in the words of the spiritual master and the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the secret of success in Vedic knowledge is revealed. The Krishna consciousness movement is being propagated according to this principle, and therefore our preaching work is going on successfully, in spite of the many impediments offered by antagonistic demons, because we are getting positive help from our previous acharyas. One must judge every action by its result. The members of the self-appointed Acharya's party who occupy the property of the Gaudiya Math are satisfied, but they could make no progress in preaching. Therefore, by the result of their actions, one should know that they are ashad, or useless. Whereas the success of this ISKCON party, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which strictly follows Guru and Gauranga, is increasing daily all over the world. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to print as many books as possible and distribute them all over the world. We have tried our best in this connection, and we are getting results beyond our expectations. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militang Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamaikam Dadati Shapandantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'd like to first, before speaking, request permission and blessings of the devotees, particularly those who are senior by age or by advancement in Krishna consciousness. Thank you. This purport and verse and purport are very strong. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada points out some difficulties that arose within the Gaudiya Math institution. It's very rare that we find such discussion in the book, in Srila Prabhupada's books. But according to the Sri Upanishad, Vidyam chayas tad vido bhayam saha, that one needs to know how the process of spiritual development and the process where one gets derailed from their spiritual progress, they need to know both side by side in order to get the full blessings of immortality. So Srila Prabhupada's pointing this deviation here in the purport of the Gaudiya Math for our education, so that we may not make a similar error in our progress going back to Godhead. So what is that error that was made? Who can say? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kavita.
No, you say.
Instead of focusing on preaching, they focused on who should become the acharya. The instruction from their guru was to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya.
Yes, yes. And if there's another aspect to it also.
Hare Krishna.
What's
Sorry.
that?
Go ahead. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
So the point seemed to be that they didn't follow strictly the orders of their spiritual master.
Yes.
And the previous acharyas.
And what was that order specifically in this case?
The point that they should distribute books.
That's mentioned, but the initial thing that's mentioned about that is that they should at the time of his departure, requested all his disciples to form a governing body and conduct the missionary activities cooperatively. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And so the missionary activities would be organized, and not that one person would become the head of the institution or be labeled an acharya, and then and that way things would be developed. No. He told them that they should work together. Srila Prabhupada in other places said at the time he did not see anybody qualified to take that position of the acharya. So he instructed them in this way. But as Srila Prabhupada and mentions in the purport, that by the arrangement of the dint of providence, there were two factions that developed, and then many more factions afterwards, but initially there were two factions. One group, there were two very important properties. There were many mutts and many temples in the Gaudiya Math system, but the two main temples, one was in Kolkata. It was called the Bagh Bajar Math, very big and lots of marble constructed. under the supervision of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and one of his disciples used all of his wealth to build that temple. Very beautiful temple in Kolkata, large. And the other property that was particularly wonderful was right next to Lord Chaitanya's birthplace in Mayapur. It's called the Caitanya Mat. Those two properties were the jewels of the Gaudiya Mat system. So the Gaudiya Mat devotees, although being schooled and in the scriptures and very learned in many ways and exemplary in many ways, they instead of forming a governing body to work together, one group took charge of the Kolkata temple Bagh Bazar, and the other group took charge of the Caitanya Mat in Mayapur. And they're the ones who fought with each other initially. Others fought too, but initially they fought and to get the properties of the rest of the Gaudiya Mat and the properties of the other. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's interesting that both sides had their reasons or their evidence saying, oh, our person is the Acharya. For example, the Bagh Bazar Mat became the place of a devotee, follower of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, named Ananta Vasudev, who is a highly learned person. He is the one who, we say the Prema Davani, Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa. He's the one who developed that. Some of that he took from the Madhva Sampradaya or Ramanuja Sampradaya, but he's responsible for that being part of the regular things, procedures in Krishna consciousness and in the chanting and doing respecting the deities and the devotees after a kirtan or things like that. So Ananta Vasudev was one, and they cite still up to today. They also claim that they were given the position of being the next Acharya, being appointed by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said certain things like, when he was asked, not long before his passing away, who will speak the Rupa Raghunath Bani when you've departed? So he said, well, Ananta Vasudev will speak. So they took that, you follow. They took that to mean, oh, he's the next Acharya. Did he say he wanted someone to be a next Acharya? No. But they took that, and apparently there was some desire, and Prabhupada discusses that, there was some desire for having a position, and so they took that and ignored the instruction to form a governing body and said, oh no, now this is the next Acharya. And a similar way on the other side, too, things were said that could be used to indicate that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted that person. That the other side was Bhakti Vilas Tirtha. Bhakti Vilas Tirtha. He was known as a very good manager, and he was excellent in organizing things, not so much a preacher from Shastric evidence, but a good manager. So he was given some accolades by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So his followers, his associates, they said, oh, he is the next Acharya. But they both gave up the idea that they should work together to spread Krishna consciousness, not just in India, but all over the world. So the idea of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world, that was lost by the Gaudiya Mat. partly because of this conflict, energy, resources, thoughts, where all was brought to bear, not on spreading Krishna consciousness, distributing books, and going to other countries to preach, but to resolve the conflict, which, as Prabhupada mentioned, 40 years later was not, still had not been resolved. Why had not been resolved? Because that was the arrangement of Daiva, the providence, that if you're going to go this way, it's not going to work. Because Prabhupada mentions that neither side was following the orders of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So that reflects the idea that if you please the Guru, please the spiritual master, then you can please Krishna. But if you go against the order, you don't please the spiritual master, then you get nowhere. As mentioned here, the word is asara, or useless. So those are very strong words. And as I said, Srila Prabhupada very rarely discussed this in the literature, but here it is for us to contemplate and to think about. So then, even before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's passing, he sent some of his sannyasis to overseas to London to preach. And they stayed there for some time, I think 2 years. And one of the disciples, he came back and he wrote a book saying, my first year in London, my second year in London. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took a look at the book and he thought, wow, this is nothing to do. He's not discussing anything about the spiritual masters. He's talking about himself the whole time. So he was so disturbed that he did not allow that person to come into his presence, ever. Very strong. Very strong. So hopefully within the ISKCON society, one thing different is that in the Gaudiya Math, the governing body that to work together cooperatively hadn't been established during Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's manifest presence. Srila Prabhupada, perhaps learning from that difficulty, the challenges that the Gaudiya Math faced, one of the things he did very early in 1970, in fact, just a few years after establishing ISKCON, as he established a governing body commission to work cooperatively in spreading Krishna consciousness. That's called the GBC, Governing Body Commission, with so many members, and that's developed over time. So that still continues. And he requested, in fact ordered, that GBC meet regularly, at least once yearly at Mayapur, to go over the cooperative plans for spreading Krishna consciousness around the world through preaching programs and primarily, especially through book distribution systems. And at least once a year, and they have been doing that, of course, once a year in Mayapur during Gaur Purnima festival. And also now they also meet at a different time, usually in the 6 months from that, in the early fall, to discuss the same things. So are there questions or comments on this verse? It's a very interesting history.
Lot of comments, a lot of questions.
Okay, please. This is Krishna Kirtan Prabhu, yes.
Hare Krishna. The whole essence of beginning of ISKCON by Prabhupada. I think as a members or as a leaders, we need to be very careful. Prabhupada, in one sense, this verse shows being proud of why the ISKCON came, because generally when we work on different things. Many times we forget why I'm here and what is my original purpose of it being
Good
here.
point.
And it's natural, looks like this is a disease in this world. That's why Acharya has been focusing on this point. It's not now. It appears like it'll keep coming again and again, again and again.
Good
And-
point. Yeah,
and
500 years ago it was there and still today. Yes.
And day by day, as Kali goes, I don't know what is going to happen. But every sincere devotee leader who claims to be, Prabhupada's movement, abide Prabhupada's essence, in the real meaning why he was focusing on. And sometimes small differences will be there. That's natural. That's why GBC was made. At the same time, one should not deviate that from the purpose of being here and being the purpose of the movement. And we see the divisions happened, and we see the divisions happening. We can talk about so much, but don't not to get carried away by distracted by name, fame, position, and not only that, with thinking that this is only the right way. Rather have a cooperative way of serving the movement. I think that's what is being very much stressed as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As you mentioned, so Srila Prabhupada repeatedly said, please don't change. He said, your Western mentality, you've probably heard this, your Western mentality is always to change. But he's giving the process purely, and it works if you don't change it. Sometimes, if a person has an illness and they're prescribed a medicine, you take the medicine, and if you're not cured and immediately, and 1 day or 2 days, then you think, oh, I have to change the medicine. Those who are psychiatrists, that's one of their things all the time. The person, they give them a medicine for a particular problem, for depression or whatever, and after 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, it doesn't work. So give me another medicine. One they change, 16 times they change the medicine. But the process of Krishna consciousness coming down through the disciplic succession, it will work. But there has to be utsahan, nishchayat dharyat, enthusiasm, determination, and patience. It'll work. Maybe not in 1 day, 2 days, but it will work over time for sure. So not if we think it doesn't work immediately, then we'll have to change it. That's a problem. That won't work. Other comments, questions? I don't know if Krishna Kirtan, you had many questions too. I don't know.
When you mention about change, that itself brings a lot of discrepancies and contradictions, because the other day we discussed about on the call, I don't know you were there or not, about Prabhupada using rascal.
Yeah.
It was acceptable certain times. Now devotees are confused. Oh, what to do? What is this? Why this is used? Today, actually, I was hearing Prabhupada's lecture in the morning. He was saying he was meaning rascal means mudha. He said, I stated many times rascal is mudha. He was meaning to mudha. But the point is, sometimes even though devotees do not want to change, but this world, the culture in this world changes. The way people think, the way government rules, the regulations and situations, circumstances changes constantly. Language 30 years back is not acceptable now, and language now will not be acceptable after 30 years. Culture now will not be acceptable after 30 years. That looks like the way it is going on. So this will definitely bring friction and adapt the change. So my understanding that, in principle, one has to remain same, but one has to work, to do as time, place, circumstances But will that be one point you said that, in Western culture, it's a disease to change. Yeah, I see that. We don't want to change, stay in the same college, same family, same house, same sangha. We need constant change. But how can you deal with the constant change which happens in our societies outside? But we want to remain from the writings and teachings. Even how will we balance?
How do we remain faithful to that?
Yeah, faithful, and how will we adapt balance? That's also my question. Yeah,
I don't know what the balance between what and what. Between adjusting to changes in the society and being faithful to the orders and teachings of the acharyas. Is that what
right, right.
Yeah. So yeah, I could speak a little on that. I mean, I see that Mother Golokananda Priya also has her hand up, but so Shruti Kirti asked Srila Prabhupada about that. And so he said, well, how can you tell the difference between changing a principle and adjusting to time and circumstances you're mentioning? So Srila Prabhupada thought about that, and then you know what he said?
No.
He said, that takes a little intelligence, he said.
Okay.
So then what is that intelligence? I mean, in our society, there's if there's a question, we'll err on the side of caution to follow the orders of the spiritual master as they're given. And then in discussion with other sadhus or devotees, we can talk about those things where there might need to be any kind of adjustments. For example, nowadays, if people read textbooks, they have to instead of saying he, they sometimes say she. You know this? They alternate. It's in the Western. I don't know if it's all over the world, but at least in the United States, it's a practice over the last 30 years. They have to do that because there was some discussion among people that if you say he only, then it means you're only talking about men, not ladies, not women. So, in the olden days, or not that far old, but back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, if you say he, it was understood that meant human beings, all humans. But later so now it's been changed. So what about Srila Prabhupada's books? Because Srila Prabhupada book says he all the time. So it only applies like a spiritual master, he can become. So no women spiritual masters, right? That says he, it doesn't say she. So the adjustment, but that was brought, of course, to the GBC, and they chose not to adjust to that, at least so far, citing for a variety of reasons. So what do you think?
Well, that is what it brings a conflict.
Yes.
And that's why we need the GBC to work cooperatively. And
Yes.
that's why GBC should handle this very expertly rather than just making it a worldwide issues. Because if GBC is the ultimate authority, they should be able to handle it.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they are not able to themselves, looks like.
Yeah. The GBC is the managing authority. Yes, there is an authority. It's not that everybody does whatever they feel like, but still within that there's varieties. Mother Golokananda Priya, I don't want to ignore you. You have your hand up for some time. You're on mute.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
It looks like your Wi-Fi name or password has changed.
Yes. Okay. So, excuse me, sorry. Okay, Hare Krishna. Yeah, my question about change, the other day on Sunday, I have a discussion with a good friend, and we have a long discussion about this, because we are unable to preach to the Western people because the paradigm that we have, Like when they come to the temple, they see like the temple is full with Indians wearing, wearing dhoti, wearing kurta, wearing sari, and that's one of the reason, like we cannot attract, Western people. So we need to change, and people who are not priests, who are not living at the temples, they should just stop wearing, like devotional, so like, doing kurta, like we call in ISKCON devotional clothes. And he said, we really need to change. ISKCON has to change it. So what your thought about it?
Well, if we identify the reason, the reason people aren't attracted to Krishna consciousness is because of the dress. That's, has someone made a survey to that effect, or that there's a lot of Indian people and they don't fit in with Indian people, they only fit in with if they were Western people? I'm not sure that's true. It may be true, but I'm not sure that's true. One should be very careful of starting off with that premise. It could be, and I would present that, if the philosophy and the kirtan and the basic practices of Krishna consciousness, which are, Bhagavad Gita philosophy, Krishna Prasadam, and chanting the holy names are presented purely, then those who are attracted, those who have a spiritual attraction will be attracted no matter the other circumstances. And one could make that argument as well. And I would tend to make that argument. Then you can also look at some things that, what did Srila Prabhupada actually say about certain things? For example, wearing dhotis. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada didn't emphasize the wearing of dhotis at all times in all places, but certainly Lord Chaitanya wore a dhoti. Srila Prabhupada wore a dhoti. So it's not an external, it's not just because of fashion, but when asked, he said, oh, if someone is wearing a dhoti, then you can ask them, just like you see a policeman on the street, then you can ask them if you have some concern about a legal matter or something. You want to ask directions, something like that. So similarly, someone in the temple, if they have a dhoti, then there's not that many people wearing a dhoti in the temple, by the way. If you take a look at it. But anyway, you can ask them about spiritual matters, about Krishna consciousness. So it goes both ways. A person, if they're attracted just by dress or rejected by dress, then that's pretty much on a superficial platform. Anyway, Shashi Shekhar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. On this point, I came from the West, and I can say that seeing that there was an alternative to the Western culture is something that attracted me specifically to Krishna consciousness, and having the, some kind of different understanding of what I was raised that didn't make any sense to me, and a different type of culture that actually had the type of values that I could align with, is the thing that made me want to become Krishna conscious. So I think the speculation, which it seems like that we need to relate with the Western culture by adopting the temporary Western dress or the temporary Western ideas of the moment, and that's going to draw people into Krishna consciousness. Ultimately, that conversation has been in the society for, I haven't been around this long, but maybe a decade or more.
Say since the beginning.
Yes, but is that what has that caused a huge influx of people to come to Krishna consciousness? From what I can tell, it hasn't. It seemed to be that Krishna consciousness was most vibrant in the United States. Of course, Srila Prabhupada was here, But when the majority of devotees were operating and looking and totally adopting the culture, the Vedic, I guess you could say, for whatever that means, the spiritual culture, the dress, that's when Krishna consciousness was most vibrant. I think in one way, because it showed a different way of life, truly, that people that were attracted to that spiritual culture could connect with. But if I just walk down the street and I see another yoga studio or another thing that's just the same thing as everything else, like, I'm just going to keep walking. But if I see something that's truly looks different, it's actually going to attract me. So I'm just for whatever it's worth, I feel like if we look at the history and what's actually working, this idea of changing, it seems like, where's the proof that it works? So anyways, I would say that maintaining the spiritual culture is what Srila Prabhupada presented to us, so that we should try to follow what that is. Is that correct? I mean, we follow Srila Prabhupada and we don't change. And
Yes, we have to see
mercy.
what Srila Prabhupada recommended. Srila Prabhupada didn't especially emphasize a change in dress. He made that clear. You can, if you search on the Veda base for dhoti, DHOTI, you can do it, see how many results you'll get. Hardly any. There's a couple, and 2 or 3 in letters. That's about it. So that wasn't a major thing, but at the same time, it wasn't something that was discouraged. I see that Krishna Kirtan Prabhu has his hand up again.
Yeah, because I've been going through these conversations, and Sasiseka Prabhu made a very practical point, actually. One, he gave his own experience, what is his attraction for. And he also made, while I'm not disagreeing that we should be creating an environment where other people should think it is also for me, but at the same time, he also made it that if you're not a little different than others, then why they will what is the change we have? So has to be change, has to be there. And that's really a very practical point. You also made, even though Prabhupada did not stress that, wearing the dhoti, but examples are better than, what is words. So I hear many senior devotees, they say, no, there's no need. You can be Vaishnava without wearing. But in a personal life, devotees are wearing, senior devotees are wearing, because they know this is a very, mode of goodness, and it's a different experience. So, yeah, we have to balance and understand that, okay, to accommodate new people, we can present in a society in such a way that they feel like I'm also welcome. Yeah, it's for everybody. It's not just a particular sector. Sometimes people think, oh, it's only for Hare Krishna, so it's not for me. So they feel that, for years they don't try it out. When there's a mix of devotees are there in both, what happens? Oh, it's for everybody. But once I come to Krishna consciousness, I should know that, oh, what is a Krishna culture? And slowly adapt this Tilak and Vaishnava attire. I think both are needed.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
Thank you. I don't know, Mother Golokan and Priya.
I told him, when Srila Prabhupada was here, and why Prabhupada didn't, discourage, for us to wear good dhoti and kurta in the Western world. And then she said, oh, Prabhupada never told anybody to wear, dhoti and kurta.
Yeah.
They are the one who started to do that. Prabhupada didn't recommend it.
Well, he didn't tell, but he had his example, and devotees did wear. He encouraged certain things. Yeah, he didn't say, "Oh." You can look on the Veda base and search for it. You'll see Prabhupada's comments on devotees. There are only a few. He liked that ladies. He liked also that ladies wore saris. He said, "Oh, you look very beautiful in the sari." He would say like that. So did he say you got to wear a sari? No. No, but he encouraged certain things. So, and many times he said, well, the dress is external. Yes, yes. But as been pointed out, there's any society, there's a certain, what does culture mean? It means food, it means dress, it means entertainment, kind of entertainment. So in the Krishna conscious society, we have food. So we have prasadam. And sometimes people say, well, we should make the prasadam, more like the Western prasadam, Western food. I'm sorry, not prasadam, but certain things Krishna likes. And Srila Prabhupada, he could have said, hey, yeah, just make, you just make the food just like you do. But he showed devotees how to make samosas, kachoris, curry, and all the different things. Why? Why did he go to the trouble? Two reasons. One is he needed to train up the disciples in a certain way, his disciples, and because those things he knows those are things that are pleasing to Krishna. Was it?
Yeah, and the argument also about the dress, he said, oh, Prabhupada didn't say to dress like prostitutes, showing your body, and when we go to Mayapur, all the young people, you can see like half of the middle body or something.
Yeah.
They have so much argument about it.
Okay. Well, whatever they say, but please chant Hare Krishna. Please chant Hare Krishna. Please follow the four regulative principles, and please read Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, those things. Yeah. One other thing about this, Advaitacharya, these were two groups of Advaitacharya's sons. He had 3 sons who became Smarta Mayavadis and 3 sons who became devotees. Advaitacharya is an expansion of Mahavishnu. So that's pretty amazing that he had sons that were deviant. There's a book called the Advaita Prakash. I don't know if you've seen that book. Sometimes, I don't know, it's sold various places, and even in ISKCON temple someplace. That Advaita Prakash book is not an authorized book. It's supposed to be the other additional pastimes of Advaitacharya, but in the book there are many mistakes showing that the person who, it's supposedly written by Advaitacharya's one of his servants, but in the book you'll find many mistakes that indicate that it's not accurate, and the motive of the person is to glorify Advaitacharya beyond as being better than Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, which is so it's likely written, even though it's attributed to one of the servants. It's likely written by someone who's in the Advaita Parivar, the family, the family descendants of Advaitacharya, who want to give more importance to Advaitacharya than Lord Chaitanya. So be careful about the Advaita Prakash book if you have that book. Someone gave it to me as a present one time. I started reading, and I thought, this doesn't sound right. Do you have Shashi Shekhar? Did you have more to say, or your hand is up just because you forgot to put it down?
No, if I had time, I wanted to ask or just clarify one thing. So we could understand that Srila Prabhupada was presenting us an eternal spiritual culture in what he brought to the West. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's not some kind of colonial British or Indian kind of idea, because this seems to be the general tone that I hear when people say, hey, you don't have to wear dhotis or this or that, like this is just from India. But we should understand that what Srila Prabhupada was presenting was an eternal culture, not what the West most certainly is not a spiritual culture. It's a temporary, for the most part, tamasic culture. And so we would want to try to move towards Srila Prabhupada's presentation, not the Western presentation. I just want to be clear on that for my own understanding, that we should relate to what Srila Prabhupada presented as an eternal culture, not a temporary idea from where he grew up or something like that.
Very good observation, I feel. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Any other points or ideas or questions? Oh, it's getting late. We might contrast with what happened at the disappearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to what happened at the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned that his guru Maharaj didn't see anybody qualified, so he insisted that they work together to push on the movement. And some of his statements were misconstrued. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's statements were misconstrued to say, "Oh, this person is the Acharya, that person's the Acharya," but the main instruction was disobeyed. So one contrasts some of that with how things work in ISKCON after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. Okay. Thank you all for your attention and contributions. Thank you all. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo.
Namo Namah.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna.